Mmm. What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today for the very first time ever, I've made Turkish style eggs, which is basically a garlicky Greek style yogurt topped with an Aleppo pepper butter with a little olive oil added to it and poached eggs. I finished it off with some flaky salt, some dill. I also added some herbs into the Greek yogurt just to switch things up a little bit. So there's dill, parsley, and mint. In the Greek yogurt, I've got some sourdough bread that I just like put the whole thing in the oven, enclosed, what's the word, with tin foil for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I just sliced it up so it's crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. I cut pretty thick slices accidentally. We're gonna make it work. All right guys, well let's just go ahead and get started eating, and I'm gonna tell you the second half of my story from Peru. All right, this looks so good, and I love tzatziki. I know this is not tzatziki, but it's very reminiscent of, without the cucumber of course. I love eggs. This is the first time I've poached eggs like this before. I'm gonna get a good amount of that yogurt on here. This is the first time I'm ever trying Aleppo pepper that I am at least aware of. Just piled on top of some delicious crusty bread. Mmm. Mmm. Oh my gosh, that is so good. And I'm so glad I love this because yogurt is so high in protein, low in fat. I love eggs. Those are another big high protein, low calorie food. This is something you could eat very, very regularly. The Aleppo pepper, by the way, not all that spicy. It's meant to have kind of a sweetness to it, a bit of a lemony flavor, and a bit of spice. If you can't find Aleppo pepper, you can use cayenne and paprika combined. You could use a red pepper flake. This came in like these like tiny, tiny little flakes, like much smaller than traditional red pepper flakes. Mm. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it tastes like. Mm. Those fresh herbs in the yogurt are completely setting this off, plus the Aleppo pepper. Every bit of this, super rich, luxurious yolk on the inside. Cook them however long you want, by the way. If you don't like runny yolk, you could hard cook them, though the yolk does add to kind of like the sauce, like the Aleppo pepper butter kind of just like goes into everything. So that's what I recommend. But yeah, you can try this with eggs done another way, or you can fry them if you'd like. Okay, so the second half of our trip. Ooh. Ooh. So we left off, it was the end of New Year's Eve. So basically we're on New Year's Day. I slept great that night. Shane actually had 2 eye masks with him because he asked for a new eye mask for Christmas. So now that I knew where that was, to put it on before I fell asleep, I just had a much better time. So the next day, we hired a taxi driver, and this is something I recommend for anybody, especially in a foreign country, and especially for countries that are like a little bit less expensive to go to, because it costs almost nothing for you to basically have a taxi for the day. So we asked the man that owned our hotel, we said, hey, we want to basically tour the whole Sacred Valley tomorrow. And he's like, cool, I know taxi drivers, I'll set you guys up. I think it ended up being like 110, 120, maybe it was 200 actually. 200 in Peruvian money. And American money is 25% of that. So basically for the day, we had him for like 50 bucks plus tip, maybe 75 bucks. And that's like a really good tip because I think that they expect 10% more or less in Peru. So for very cheap, we had him drive us to Pisac. So you get over to Pisac and there's ruins over there, not nearly like Machu Picchu. I mean, they're very cool looking and it's cool to go and see, and all of the agricultural features that they have with the like tiers, the steps. This is so good. One thing I didn't do is rewarm the eggs so they're more room temperature. But what you can do is save your water. Don't have it out of simmer or anything. Just make sure it's still hot. And dunk all of the poached eggs in the water right before you serve. Keep them in there for, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds just to warm them up again. Drain them over again. But these you can do them in advance. You could actually put them in the fridge and do the same thing with the warm water and have them for like the next, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days even. So we go to Pisac, and then we drive to Ollantaytambo, which is where you would go to get on a train to go to Machu Picchu. So that car ride was a little bit longer. It was like a 2-hour car ride. I mean, how cheap is this? Can you imagine Ubering to all these places in the US? It would be just astronomical. So we go to Ollantaytambo. There's more ruins there. We didn't really go into them or anything. We looked through some of the lists kind of last minute, and I found on Lonely Planet a list of places to eat in Ollantaytambo. So we ended up finding this awesome little restaurant called Apu Veronica, and Shane tried alpaca. It was like sizzling on the plate when it got to him. I had the best ceviche. Again, it was trout ceviche because you're in the mountains, so there's freshwater fish and there's ceviche. And then they do traditionally choclo, which is this like giant starchy corn. So they'll like steam or boil the kernels, add those in. They've got these like smaller little like popcorn bitties that they like fry, but it's not popcorn, so they add those in. Sweet potato, red onion, and ají amarillo, which is like their prized pepper there. Spicy, but not crazy. So good. This is such a simple, like you could do this Aleppo butter in advance too. You could do the yogurt, and it's actually, I think it'd be better if you did it in advance, both the butter and the yogurt, because they're just gonna get, like they're gonna marinate in those flavors and the garlic and the herbs and the pepper. So if you're like meal planning, this would be like a really clutch, really unique meal to incorporate. Mm. Oh my gosh, the bread. So Ollantaytambo, we're there. The guy is gonna like take us back for 4, so we had like 2 hours to just like stroll around. There were supposed to be New Year's Day celebrations there, which I think were kind of taken down a notch. We saw the end of this like traditional like bowling style game. It was definitely not what you and I probably know as bowling. Very different. If I can find a picture or even a small video to put here so you can see like a little bitty of it, I will. Otherwise, it was cool because they had, you know, their traditional costumes on, and there were like dancing and everything. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm having a moment. This would be so good with cherry tomatoes. Holy moly. If you just like roasted some cherry tomatoes or blistered them in a pan. Oh my gosh, and then just burst. So we got back that night around like, I don't know, 6. It was pretty early. But we had a very early day the next day because we were going to Machu Picchu the next day. So we just went to a restaurant in the main square that was supposed to have good lomo saltado, which is this like stir-fried beef, tomato, and onion, I want to say, dish. I don't think there's peppers. It's tomato and onion. So we got that, and then all I wanted was dessert. My stomach was still like so small, it felt like I was getting full so fast, but I really wanted dessert. So I ordered this really cool, and I have a video of this. It's like a biscuit in the shape of a spiral that they put on top of like a custard, like a creme anglaise or something like that, I think. And a little scoop of ice cream on top. And when they bring it to your table, they tell you to just smash the whole thing together, to like smash it up, mix it all up and eat it like that. Oh my gosh, guys, texturally, this cookie was like wafer thin, but it held up, like it didn't get soggy. And the ice cream and the sauce, like with the temperatures and the, oh my gosh, guys, it was so good. And there was no chocolate in it, and I'm definitely a chocolate person, so that's saying something. It's like in my nose. And I wanted to try Pisco just like by itself. It's not even as strong as some of the other like heavy liquors, like vodka and whiskey and everything. Like I don't think it's as strong as those, but they gave me what, you know, a Pisco that they recommended, and I'm like, I physically can't. And I drink vodka on the rocks. You've seen me do it. I could not drink this Pisco by itself. So somehow I had the guy come over, and you know, there's a communication gap for sure. But somehow I communicate with this guy well enough that I want a coffee-based drink with the Pisco, that I didn't want a Pisco sour, just something coffee-based. And guys, it was like God was like shining his light down on me, because he came back with what looked like almost exactly like an espresso martini. And if you guys know me, you know how much I freaking love espresso martinis. I mean, it had the foam on the top, it had the espresso beans inside. He even made a decaf for me. I mean, and it wasn't an espresso martini. So this thing was called a carajillo. So it's C-A-R-A-J-I-L-L-O. And it's basically like a Spanish version of an espresso martini with liquor 43. So instead of using this like liquor 43, they used Pisco and the espresso and whatever other like coffee liqueur or whatever that they put into it. Oh my gosh, it was so good. It was like the perfect ending to that day. It was just a super relaxing day, and I got a decaf espresso martini at the end of it. So that night, a guy from the service that we basically used to plan our Machu Picchu trip met us at our hotel and gave us all of the things we were going to need for the next day. So from Cusco, that means bus tickets and train tickets, actually 2 sets of bus tickets. He arranged for a taxi to meet us at our hotel at 4 o'clock in the morning, I want to say. You have to get to the train station 30 minutes before it departs. Bus and train station, you have to be there 30 minutes ahead of time. So we had to plan to be at the bus station in Cusco by like 4:10, and then by 4:40 we had to head to Ollantaytambo, which is where we were the previous day for New Year's. I started over here and now I'm over here. So we get picked up, we go to the bus station, and we find out that you're required to wear face shields specifically on the buses and the trains. They already have a mask policy, right? You either had to wear an N95 or you had to double mask using at least one surgical mask. Not to mention on the bus, they had plastic in between me and Shane, like in between the couple seats, plastic in between those, plastic in between the other, like it was excessive, like very, very good effort. So we had to buy face masks, like the face shields, when we got to the bus station. And Shane went to sleep. I couldn't go back to sleep. It was full sun, 5 a.m. So we get to Ollantaytambo, we hop on the train, kind of like inconsistent regulations, because half the time we weren't just carrying our face shields, the other half the time they were like on our head, there was no rhyme or reason to like what they were allowing and not allowing. Get on the train, it was another 2.5 hour train ride over to Aguascalientes, which is the city that basically was created for Machu Picchu and the tourists. And then we had a bus that we were going to take from Aguascalientes up to the very top at 11 o'clock. We get on that bus, and this is just the most terrifying bus ride ever, by the way. There are buses coming down this mountain, which is pretty much one lane with no rail on like 99% of it. And they're having to like back up, move over, like maneuver so that they don't hit each other. Absolutely freaking terrifying. I mean, that bus tumbles, you are completely dead. You were dead. So we make it to the top. They've got refreshments up there, so I like threw back a pisco sour before we went in with our tour guide. We go into Machu Picchu, and I had low expectations. I thought, okay, this is something that gets so hyped, and we're probably gonna get there and it's gonna be like disappointing. So he's walking us in, he's explaining the rules of as we're going. He's like, don't stomp on the ground because you don't want to compact the earth. That's going to cause damage to the land, so no jumping. He's like, no TikTok videos, which I just assumed was a joke, and I hadn't planned on, you know, doing anything but taking pictures up there. And so, you know, he starts telling us about stuff, and we're working our way up to the top, which is where all of like the great picture spots are. It's a Lady Susan, by the way. I wanted something that was going to contrast with the yogurt. So we get up there, and guys, this is one of the most magnificent things I've ever seen. You just kind of stand there, and there's these rolling like mountain hills, like it's just like so grandiose. You feel so small, like your problems are just, you know, they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. And all of this, like this whole mountain range is sort of like wrapped around like Machu Picchu. It's just sort of nestled inside. And Machu Picchu, by the way, is actually referring to the mountain that the bus drove up. It means big mountain. It's either Old Mountain or Big Mountain. So Machu Picchu is the mountain you climb up on. The settlement doesn't actually have a name. And the mountain that is on the other side of Machu Picchu that you see like behind it is Huayna Picchu, which either means young or smaller mountain. And people will go and climb Huayna Picchu too, which is very dangerous, and they might not be 100% honest about how dangerous it actually is. He said very few people died there, but somebody else said that somebody died there like 2 weeks prior. So keep that in mind. So we get up there, we take all of our pictures. Really funny, while we were up there, like taking our pictures at like kind of this main plateau area. This chick who was very clearly like, I mean, she was dressed to impress. I mean, very flashy outfit. And she starts doing what appears to be a TikTok dance up there. And I'm telling you guys what, they almost kicked her out. And she's arguing with them, like, what do you mean? Everybody else is like, you know, posing and stuff. And like, what? We are just dying. I'm like, wow, he was really serious about the TikTok thing. Highly, highly, highly recommend doing a tour, because otherwise you don't get any information. There's no plaques, there's no anything on the actual property. So you really need somebody there to explain everything, unless you want to go to the Machu Picchu Museum, which isn't necessarily the easiest to get to, I've heard. It's kind of like up the mountain a bit on Aguascalientes, and I feel like you may more or less just have to walk there. There's not really taxis. It's just buses and the train. Like, seriously, there's no other reason for people to be there other than tourists are going to Machu Picchu. So yeah, we ended up making it down just in time for our bus. Train took us back to Ollantaytambo, and Shane and I decided, screw the second bus, there's gonna be plenty of taxis here that'll take us back to Cusco. Let's go eat at that restaurant again. So we eat at the restaurant again, everything's great. We go downstairs and we're like, start looking around for taxis, which we didn't really find many of. And we start asking like, hey, can you take us to Cusco? And they're like, Cusco? Absolutely not. A little bit of panic starts to set in, because the next day we were supposed to fly back to Lima and be there for the next like 4 days. I go into this hostel and I go to this guy and I'm like, please, 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 can you help us? Like, can you call a taxi for us? Do you know anybody around here that would be willing to drive us to Cusco? Maybe not the best or like safest idea, I guess. But this guy was a freaking legit. He ran around the whole area looking for somebody, and there was no money promised to him or anything. He was just doing it out of the kindness of his freaking heart. So he goes, starts running around, finds a dude to take us back to Cusco. So we like gave him like a nice tip, and you know, it hardly cost us anything to get back to Cusco anyways. So we ended up getting back at a reasonable hour, and the train ride was gorgeous, by the way. Absolutely stunning. Going to and from, I mean, the scenery, guys, like this whole like bus train situation really takes you on a scenic route. If you wanted to hike Machu Picchu too, you absolutely can. It takes about 4 days, 4 days. 4 days I know for one of them. One of them I think is even longer than that. There's a few different trails that you can go to. So it's a trek, and Shane and I might go back and do the hiking thing, but this was definitely not that occasion, and thank God, because I was just not, I don't think I would have been in any sort of position to do that. So I know this is ridiculous because I only went over like 2 days, 2 more days of our trip, which I guess I only went over 2 days the first, the first video. I will do a part 3 of the Peru adventure, our time back in Lima, and that'll wrap up the whole Peru story. So you guys can comment any questions that you have about Peru. I sort of did the same thing in the first Peru video, asking if you guys had any questions and I can address them in the last and final video of our Peru adventure. All right, guys, this was so delicious and so easy. You don't even have to worry about poaching your eggs. I really liked this method, using the strainer, which actually like separates all of that like watery white from the rest of the egg, and that's what you end up seeing kind of floating around in the water, all the wispiness. To minimize that as much as possible, get the freshest eggs that you can. You can check how fresh your eggs are by putting them in some water. If they lay flat, that means they're fresh. If they sit upright, that means that they are old and they are likely pretty watery and not great to use for a poached egg. So if you don't have super fresh eggs and you don't want to chance it, even with the strainer method, just go ahead and fry some eggs. Yeah, who cares? Live your life. This was so good. You have to make it. Tangy, creamy, herby, luxurious with the egg yolk. The Aleppo pepper was, oh my gosh, so good. The little sweet kind of acidity from it. Nice crusty bread. You could even use like a flatbread if you'd like, a pita or naan. Really just like your favorite bread. You want to have it be able to like soak up some of the goodness, so nothing super, super crunchy or overly toasted. And I like having that crusty exterior just for a little bit of textural interest, if you will. Comment below what you thought about this recipe. This was a pretty traditional recipe, guys. I followed it pretty exactly, other than I added some herb mixture to the yogurt. Comment below other international dishes you want to see me make next. Thank you guys so much for joining today. I am having so much fun being back in the kitchen. I've been watching some masterclass, which I'm obviously not going to start going into right now, but it's given me a lot of great ideas and it's been helping me in the kitchen. So a lot of exciting things that I'm hoping to bring to the table, literally, this year for you. So thank you guys. You make this whole thing possible for me. I appreciate you more than you know. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys